All right, welcome to the George Lynch Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Legendary Gear, the game call company that is legend by design. Well, folks, our guest this week, I'm really proud to have him on, to call him, be able to feel blessed to call him a friend. But he's kind of like me. He likes to hunt, he likes to fish, but his big passion is waterfowl, and that's where his heart desire runs. And kind of like myself, but Gary's been involved in guiding it as a younger man, and today he has a Legend Outdoor TV show. He has a legend. He's the head of the Legend of the Outdoors Hall of Fame. And from Springville, Tennessee, our guest is Mr. Garry Mason. Gary, welcome aboard.
Hey, George, thanks so much for having me, man. I tell you, I can tell by looking behind you that you and I are kindred spirits.
That's absolutely the truth. It's not about I guess I'm cut from a different, like you, and we come from a different age. And when I go on hunts and stuff like this, you're out in the field, and we're you're busy looking at the skies. Kind of like, I remember my Chessie, Mad Dog nonstop was looking at the skies, watching the skylines, and
Yep,
I'm one of those guys that, man, if I could leave that thing at home and head to the duck blind and never worry about um, answering the call or doing it. But I'm out there for that sunset, and I'm out there for that sunrise, and the experience. And the Phil Robertson made a comment years ago, and I have to say it was true. When people ask you, what is it that sticks in your, what is it that really gets you, drives you when you're out there, and especially when it's good. And it's like he said, it's the sound of those wings. And if ever anybody's ever loves the duck or goose hunt or waterfowl, who's been blessed enough to sit underneath a bunch of birds coming down and hearing those wings flutter, man, it don't get any better than that. And I think that's what. And it isn't the shooting, it isn't the boom 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 roaring of the guns. It's the sound of those wings, and that anticipation. For me, even of all the, I don't know how many times that have called shots, but it's that anticipation of trying to figure that right moment that I'm going to call take them. Yeah.
absolutely. Well, I tell people there's three sounds that's the most beautiful sounds in the world, and that's a mallard Susie quack, a Canada goose honk, and honey calling you to supper.
Ah, there
That's
you
the three prettiest sounds in the world.
Yeah, I
So,
gotta agree with that. Well, Gary, I know we were talking and stuff. You were a guy. You've guided kind of like all of us. We all started. We hunted. We worked hard. We got pretty good at what we do, and I started my early days doing a lot of outfitting, guiding, and stuff. And I take it that's pretty much the same way you kind of got yourself worn in. You were an outfitter and guide years ago.
yeah, I did. I started when I was 22 years old, guiding duck and goose hunters here on Kentucky Lake. And then a little bit later on, a couple of years later, I bought a bass boat and started guiding fishing because I fished on Kentucky Lake all the time as well. And I wound up guiding a lot of different places across the country. I'd spent an extensive amount of time in South Dakota where I had a partner. Started out guiding for some of the major lodges up there, waterfowl hunting and pheasant hunting. I raised and trained Labrador retrievers from the time I was 22 years old. Still got labs, and I have had a Chessie or two. But I spent most of my time on the waters of Kentucky Lake, and then got to go to a lot of great places. You mentioned a while ago Buck Gardner and Mike McLemore. We've talked about Mike, and of course Wade Bourne and all those guys. And I spent a lot of time with all those guys. Harold Knight and David Hale. They've been like uncles to me since I was 23, 24 years old, and served on several different pro staffs for those call manufacturers. And then I hosted the Tennessee State and the U.S. Open duck and goose calling contest for 9 years. So I spent a lot of time waterfowl hunting, but I got my start. I tell everybody jokingly, I kissed my first girl and shot my first greenhead when I was 15 years old. And I married my high school sweetheart, and we like one more year of being married 50 years. So she stopped
Wow,
the girl kissing, but she let me hunt them greenheads. So,
that's a great
so
story.
I've had a great career.
Both the loves of your life. There you go.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I jokingly tell people that I fish during the off season, the off duck season. So,
Yeah, there you go.
but I looked around in 2002, and I couldn't find a Hall of Fame in America for these great men and women that I'd gotten to share a lot of time with. Brenda Valentine, I grew up with Brenda in Buchanan, Tennessee, and of course Wade and Mike and Harold and David and Earl Bench, that had Triton boats and now Camus boats, and Roland Martin and Jimmy Houston, all of them.
Bill
Yeah,
Cook.
all of them. Bill
Yeah.
Cooksey, yeah, Bill and I've been buddies for a long, long time.
Yeah.
And matter of fact, Bill, I got a quick story about Bill. We was holding the Tennessee State and U.S. Open duck and goose calling contest, and Mike McLemore was one of the judges, and Buck Garner was one of the judges, and several more. Well, Bill blew in the Tennessee State, and he didn't do well, and he had won the year before, and he come to me. He said, "Take my name off the list for the U.S. Open. I'm not going. I'm calling bad. I'm not going to blow it." And I talked to him into that. I said, "Now, Bill," I said, you really need to stay in that. You need to go to the World Championship. That's your way in. If you didn't win the Tennessee State, you could win your way into the U.S. with the U.S. Open." He come back and called in it and won it and went on to the world that year. And but a lot of great stories about a lot of these great men and women that I come up with. But I looked around in 2002 and I couldn't find a Hall of Fame other than the Boone and Crockett and Pope and Young and halls of fame that you had to have something of magnitude under your belt to get into. And I told my wife real innocently one night that there wasn't a Hall of Fame in America for people in the outdoors industry. I've been looking on the slow dial-up internet, and I said, "That's a shame." I said, "Somebody ought to do something about that." And she looked at me and she said, "Well, aren't you somebody?" The very next day, we founded the Legends of the Outdoors Hall of Fame, and this year will be our 22nd year of inducting people into the Legends of the Outdoors Hall of Fame from all walks of the outdoors industry.
Well, congratulations, and I'd like to thank you for that because there isn't any other recognition, really, and that has got. I can tell you, isn't this, hunting my whole life, and I had other jobs and things, but hunting is my way of life and walk of life, and what a great honor, and it can't be a better acclimate, I guess, than to be into that, and thank you for thinking of that and getting that started. It always takes the efforts of one man to get something started. And look, like you said, 22 years you've been going, and the names of great people and the great hunters that they're in that now will be recognized. I tip my hat to you, my friend.
Well, thank you. Yeah, and of course, great fishermen, outdoor writers, television show hosts, outdoor artists. We're starting a new award this year, and it's going to be the American Outdoors Artist of the Year Award. And so we do other awards at the event besides just the induction ceremony. But man, it just seems to get better every year. And I tell people that God gave me this idea. I wasn't smart enough to think of all this or do all this without Him. And, I think as outdoorsmen, we realize what the Lord has done for all of us and what He shows us each and every day. And I can't think of any place I'd rather be. You said it a while ago. You hit a home run when you said the sun sets and sunrises that we all get to see. And, it's not about the catching or the killing. If it was, we could go to the grocery store and buy our meat and buy our fish and everything. But it's just about getting to share time and camaraderie with the people that we love and enjoy and getting to see what God bestows upon us.
Yeah, one of the things I used to have a T-shirt. It was actually about traditional, but it's about talking about trying to explain why we do it and the love of what we do. And people wonder, how do you love something that you're out there killing? And one of the things that I made the comment that, I kill because I hunt, but I don't hunt to kill.
That's
And
right.
hunting is natural and has been around longer than farming. It was a way that people used to fulfill substance, to feed their family, and for years like that. So it's a natural thing. It's a way of life, and for me, it's both my family were from Tennessee and we lived in Michigan, but I grew up with a family that are hunters, and I always said that my mother was one of my biggest heroes. And every time I'd shoot a deer, my mother would get excited and go out with me and help me gut it. And always wanted to make sure I had the liver and the heart, and the heart's first thing we always ate. And she would get so excited, every time and then I got photos that I'm putting together for a kind of a scrapbook of our upbringing. But I got photos of my mother that we used to do a lot of pheasant hunting, and we'd come home and I had to take care of our dogs, and we had English pointers, and then we'd lay the game coats in our garage, and my mother would come out and she'd be all excited to see that there was pheasants in the game cote, and she'd go get a pan of water and a paper bag and a newspaper and a knife, and she'd go out there and clean our pheasants. And it's
There you
just,
go.
people don't, that was our way of life. And we
Yeah,
grew up that way. So it's sad. But anyway, this T-shirt I was talking about, if I had to explain, you wouldn't understand.
that's
And
right.
that's,
Yeah,
when you're out there, and that's kind of one of the things that, you know, taking the picture of the sunset and taking a picture of your dog making a beautiful retrieve, and maybe a couple pictures you and your buddies smiling from ear to ear. But to me, the photos it isn't about photos of big piles of dead birds.
that's
You know,
right. Yeah, yeah. Hold up a bird or two, and don't hold up. Don't stand beside a whole pickup truck full of birds. Uh, Something else that I have been able to accomplish that I'm very proud of, and is in 2009 I started America's first college scholarship bass fishing program, and
wow.
we at Bethel University in McKenzie, Tennessee. I've got 11 young men that's graduated from my program that are now fishing professionally, and doing quite well, as a matter of fact. But we've won 13 national titles and 19 regional championships since 2011. So I'm very proud of what we've been able to do, and I'm still coaching the team. And right now, Major League Fishing has us ranked as the #1 college fishing program in America.
Well, bless your heart. God bless you. I tell you what, then I bet you know a kid that is a friend of mine, but Seth Borton from Adrian, Michigan. He's
Oh, I know
the
Seth
coach.
very well.
Oh man,
Yeah,
if you ever talk to Seth, he'll tell you that he came from a family of non-hunters. Seth was
yeah.
a super athlete. They went to Illinois Christian. So did my kids. I think maybe the same age as my daughter. But Seth was one of those. He was kind of the rebel with a cause. If you're an athlete, but I took Seth out a couple times and I took him, to my spots and bow hunted and deer hunted and stuff. And yeah, he was, and now I think he's coaching Adrian College, the fishing team there at Adrian College.
He
And
is. He actually beat us year before last in the Bassmasters National Championship. We won second place and Seth won first place. So
I'll tell
so
you
I
what,
got I got to get him back. So
oh,
but yeah,
good.
I think the world of Seth. He's a great guy. So
I'm going to send him a text and let him know that we just did this podcast. But you talk to him, tell him that we did a podcast together. Seth would, and he was pretty close to my kids and us. And his mother, it touched my heart because we were at a basketball game and his mother was there, and the parents are great supporters. But she was thanked me for being a good influence in his life.
yeah,
Because,
I'll text him a message and tell him that we've done this. He'll get a kick out of it. But
yeah, he's a
yeah, he's good people.
good person. Yep. So anyway, so if you had to pick fishing or waterfowl, is it a tough pick?
Oh no, it's not a tough pick at all, George. I would certainly pick waterfowl. It's been kind of the second love of my life. My wife being the first one, but waterfowl is. We fished when we were kids growing up. I grew up on about 150 acre small cattle and tobacco farm in Tennessee, and we got to go fishing or hunting. There wasn't any deer or turkeys here at the time. There was a lot of quail, a lot of rabbits, a lot of squirrels. So we small game hunted. My granddaddy always had quail dogs, and but there wasn't big game here in West Tennessee, where I grew up and where Brenda Valentine grew up. And so we hunted small game and we fished. And on Sunday evening after church, that was your time. You got to go do whatever you wanted to do. And so me and my buddies, we chose hunting and fishing. But waterfowl hunting is something that I dreamed of and I read books about. And I couldn't get enough outdoor life in field and stream when I was,
Yep.
in my late teens and early 20s,
And that's all we
uh,
had,
that's
to
all we
go
had.
to.
That's right. Yeah. You read, of course, y'all always read Pat McManus at the back of
Yep.
Outdoor Life. And,
Yep.
but you read articles from everybody you could read, especially if it was about waterfowl hunting. And I searched out and tried to find as I went through, my early married part of my career, I knew that I wanted to guide people for a living. And I was, like you said, I had a regular job, but I started guiding part time, and then I'd take vacation and stuff. And we only had a 30-day duck season back then, and was on a point system. So I could take off enough and work night shift and guide during the day and make it to work. I'll tell you what I did for a living for 16 and a half years. I made kitty litter and tidy cat.
No
So,
way.
uh, yeah, yeah. I worked for
Not like a
Mr. Ed
crappy
Lowe.
job.
Yeah, it was a crappy job, but somebody had to do it.
You like you
I
never
told
heard
everybody
that before, huh?
I had a crappy job and I was catting around, you know. So,
There you
but
go. Cat and
but
mouse.
cat and mouse. But I had a great job, and that job left me. I didn't leave it. They closed the doors to the facility that I worked at, and everybody else went to the unemployment line, and I went hunting and fishing, and that's what I've been doing since 1991, full time. I was director of tourism for 9 counties in Northwest Tennessee. Helped bring a lot of bass tournaments to Kentucky Lake and Reelfoot Lake and crappie tournaments and stuff, and helped bring in a lot of hunting. And I got to know a lot of outdoor writers and television show people, and just kind of kept on expanding my career. And today I'm 67 years old, and I still feel like I'm 35. I'm in good health, and I love doing what I do. I get up every morning and talk to great folks like you that have the same passions and same love that I do. And so it just doesn't get any better than this.
No, I think that, I worked manufacturing. I was kind of like you. I went in. I had the hunting but making calls and stuff was a hobby. And then the manufacturing and everything. 2008 hit, and the world went to world spin. And especially I was at that time in Michigan, and the automotive, the housing and automotive went. And I took what was a hobby and made it full time. And when you're making something full time and you got kids to feed and everything, you want to get really serious about it, and you want to really get good
Oh
at
yeah,
it, and you want to,
yeah,
because you got a family to raise. And I think that God has timing and plans for everything in life, and without a doubt, that's what helped set me and being serious. Because I probably, if I'd have stayed at Ford Motor Company, I would have still been working there and making that gravy money and trying to do this as a hobby. But you know what? It turned out good. And I said, but I would always think I'd be in the shop working, and I'd think, man, you've got a big order for Cabela's or Bass Pro. You got to get out, and you feel the time clock, and man, this is really terrible. And all of a sudden, I'd think about being at Ford's, and I had 2 lines, so there's 60 people all together underneath you, and we were running the Expedition Explorer dashboard lines, and you're there at 5 in the morning. The line starts at 6, and a minute was a cycle, and every time you're down a minute is $1,100, and that it's ticking. And those people, I'm not knocking the union, but it was tough. If guys didn't want to show up at their spot, and you're trying to so you're each minute you're down, and the stress. And I would think about that and stop and think about all the stress I was under, and probably would have had a heart attack by then. And I always thought,
right.
you know what, it ain't so bad what I do. I go grab a cold Coke out of the refrigerator and go back to tuning and thank the good Lord that hey, this is pretty good. But it's allowed me, like you, friends that we share the same passion, that all over this country and other countries that I call friends now.
Yeah,
That I can get on the phone and say, "Hey, man, you got a spot we can hunt ducks and geese next week," and we're gone.
yeah.
And that has sure been a blessing. I didn't make the money. Probably I could have made other ways, but happiness and success is measured in different things and then monetary. And
You're right. I've had, and I know you have too. I've had clients that could buy me and give me away and never know that they lost any money at all. And every one of them would look at me and go, "Man, I sure wished I could do what you're doing for a living." And uh, I, I, I had one of the wealthiest attorneys in Texas hunt with me in South Dakota many years. I had the gentleman, he's passed away now, but him and his partner owned the blue jean company that made all the blue jeans for Walmarts and Kmart's all over the world.
wow.
And those guys, every one of them, just wanted to spend time in the outdoors and do what you and I have gotten to do for a living. And so I'm the happiest broke guy I know. I'll put it like that. So
That's what I tell everybody. Where I live here in Iowa now. It was owned by Ronald Holden, owned Holden Seed. He sold to Monsanto for like 1.2 billion. He gave everyone in his lab. In fact, it was on Oprah Winfrey years ago. He gave everyone in his lab $1 million. So
yeah,
this was his place, and this was their summer camp, duck camp. and the caretaker place that came with it. And, I prayed and prayed. I was trying to find the right place to live. And then how I fell into this and the price that I got it for. I tell everybody I'm the poorest redneck ever bought a house from a billionaire.
There you go. Well, I know that's right. So,
And life's
but
pretty good. We're all pretty happy.
absolutely. The places that you and I have gotten to go and gotten to hunt and fish, but especially waterfowl hunt, a lot of other people just dream of getting to see those spots or possibly get to read those spots or see them on TV or YouTube or whatever now. And we're the fortunate ones. We really are. We're the guys that are very, very lucky. And I tell people all the time that there's nobody that works any harder than I do to have as much fun as I have. So,
That's a good way to put it. And we were talking earlier today, and you brought something up that I thought very interesting, and I like what you said. It was talking about Canada, and I said, if you ever want to go there, I know a couple good spots, and well, it's we chose when we went up there is basically going to be a honker hunt, and we didn't want to shoot the ducks because the ducks is just the plumage. It was early, and to me, I'm just not going to pull trigger, and they were all over us. Don't get me wrong. But it wasn't right. And I like what you said. You said you'd rather, you didn't want to. You'd rather shoot waterfowl here, and you're not nothing. You're knocking down up there, but you really like to hunt and kill things. You'd rather settle for a few less birds and hunt here in the States, and then get spoiled, I guess, over there in Canada. Come back. But I thought Can you elaborate a little bit on? I thought that was very interesting.
well, I've never been to Canada, although I know it's really good up there. And uh, I've got friends that go up there and guide. I've got friends that go up there and hunt, and they all love it. And I'm sure I would. But I've just always been scared that if I went up there, that it would diminish my love for hunting here in the United States, especially in the South, which we are very dependent on a lot of things here. We're dependent on you guys freezing up and having cold weather because a duck or a goose is not going to go anywhere until cold weather pushes him out. Especially the geese, we've seen a lot of them become non-migratory now because they got water and food source,
Absolutely.
in Iowa and Illinois and places. But uh, so we depend on a lot of things to get waterfowl here in the South. And it seems like that our populations here have diminished somewhat in the last few years, especially. We had a drought last year and didn't get water until mid-season, especially down in Arkansas and the places where they really depend on water, Mississippi. But I love hunting here in the United States, and I've gotten to go to some awfully good places, and Canada would be a really good place to go. But I've just always been afraid that if I did go up there, that when I got back home, I would feel like, well, it's just not as good as going to Canada. And I certainly know that it's not, but I love hunting here, and I live in Northwest Tennessee, right on Kentucky Lake, and the Big Sandy Wildlife Management Area is a mile in front of my house. The Gin Creek Wildlife Management Area is 2 miles behind my house, and I've got the lower Big Sandy is a mile and a half to the right of my house, to the east of me, and I've got the Tennessee National Wildlife Refuge. The northern portion of it is 4 miles from my house, and the southern portion of it is 20 miles. So we've got a lot of avenues for waterfowl to be here in Northwest Tennessee. Reelfoot Lake is 85 miles to the west of me, and I go over there and hunt quite often. Uh, so we have a lot of opportunities here. And then I get to go to Arkansas and Mississippi and southern Missouri, the Boot Hill of Missouri especially. And then every once in a while out to Kansas and Oklahoma and places. So a lot of places here that I hadn't hunted yet, and I think I'll do that until I get all them used up before I
Well,
go to Canada.
that's a good one. I like that, and I just thought it was interesting, and that I respect that. One of the conversations we had, you're from Tennessee now. How far are you from Reelfoot?
I'm about 85 miles to the east of Reelfoot. I live actually, by the way the crow flies, I live about halfway in between Memphis and Nashville, and a little bit to the north of it. So live right on Kentucky Lake, and have ducks and geese fly over my house in the wintertime just about every day. So it's a hard place to move from, I'll tell you. So
I bet
Cindy and
it
I
is.
stayed right here. We live on the family farm, and we live just like the Amish. We just don't get the tax breaks. So, uh, but
Well,
it's
we talked earlier. I met him years and years ago, and then gained huge respect. And he's probably one of the guys that I looked up, especially not in the goose, but in the duck hunting, as well as Buck Gardner. Buck is a good friend of mine today, and Buck is he's always been an inspiration to me, and he's always been a good friend. But I met him and never got to hang with him. But Mike McLemore, I thought was a very interesting man to me. And that was one guy that I'd love to have duck hunted with and got to know better. But I met him through Point Moulet up there in Michigan. That's where we're at. And Point Moulet was back then, man. Those were the only shows. You wanted to see the guy, or you wanted to try out some calls, or Paul Kenyon call, or these guys, or Tim Ground stuff. You had to go to these shows. And that's where guys would come, and you get deals and shotgun shells and decoys, and Knutson's would be there. And of course, that was before all the retail stores came in, and then they started having their waterfowl shows. But that's where I met Mike McLemore up there, and I think he was. I can't remember if he won that duck contest that year up there. He could have, but he was. I thought he was pretty cool.
Yeah, Mike was a great guy. We spent a lot of time together. Not only waterfowl hunting, I didn't get to waterfowl hunt with him as much as I'd like to, but I got to squirrel hunt with Mike quite a bit. And then Mike and his dad, Mr. Mike, would come over. We have another passion that Mike and I shared. Besides the squirrel hunting with dogs, we love the bluegill fish. And
Yep.
Kentucky Lake has always been known for having some great bluegill and red ear sun fishing. And so Mike and I would fish together 2 or 3 times a year. And at the time, my youngest son was about 6 or 7 years old, and so I'd carry Tyler with us, and Mike and Mr. Mike, and Mr. Mike and Tyler would have us baiting up their hooks for them and taking the fish off, and then they go to the dock and brag how they beat me and Mike fishing. So, but I got to spend a lot of time with Mike, and Mike judged several of my calling contests, and I judged his Grand American. I met Tim Grounds through Mike, and of course, back in those days. Harold and David, the only thing that they had at that time when I first met them was a tube goose call. And then Mike started making the inserts for their 308 duck call, which was actually Mike McLemore's inserts. And, and that's kind of how Harold and David kind of kicked off their careers, So Mike was a big part of that. And so we all, we hung out together, and we got to visit a lot together, and we shared a lot of meals together talking about waterfowl hunting between me and Harold and David and Mike and Tommy Aiken, Steve McAdams.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, matter of fact,
a lot of history.
I just talked to Tommy the other day, and we're getting ready to, one day, probably in a week or two, going to load up, and me and him, Steve McAdams, and go up and see Harold and David. So they just live about an hour north of here.
They're in Kentucky?
They're in Kentucky, in Cadiz, Kentucky. Yeah.
I don't know if I was talking to you about it, but I remember years ago, Tom Matthews, when I first came out, and Bill Cooksey's one that got me to come over to Avery. I was with Final Approach with Ron Lackshaw at that time.
Right.
And Bill, in fact, I was doing the Sportsman's Warehouse. They had us going to all their different shows. I was judging all the duck contests and stuff, and that was all over the whole country. And then the following weekend, I was supposed to be in Memphis, and Bill called me up and said, "Hey, Tom would like to talk to you." And that's, well, okay, I'll talk. So I remember Friday night or whatever, Bill drove me over to their duck camp. There's a trailer there that at that time Tom's dad owned out there in Tennessee. But I remember Tom telling me a story about Harold Knight that I thought was just hilarious as all get out, about being in a McDonald's. And
yeah, that story is true.
That is, Can you tell the story?
I can tell the story because I've heard Harold tell it on himself many times. It's Harold was out working on his tractor on his farm, which was north of I-24, and he come back through, headed back home to just outside of Cadiz, there close to Lake Barkley, and he hadn't eaten nothing for lunch, and there was a McDonald's there, and Harold said he had never stopped in a McDonald's, and I believe it. Harold grew up in Land Between the Lakes, and there wasn't any McDonald's or anything there, so he pulled into McDonald's and walked in, ordered 2 cheeseburgers, an order of fries, and a Coca-Cola. And he went, set them down on the table, and remembered that he hadn't washed his hands and hadn't got the grease off his hands. So he put his set of keys there beside the drink and everything, and walked in and washed his hands. When he come back out, there was a big burly guy in a pair of bibbed overalls sitting there with a cheeseburger unwrapped. And Harold just sat down right across from him, grabbed the other cheeseburger and unwrapped it, and said, this big burly guy took a bite of the cheeseburger. Harold said, I took a bite of my cheeseburger. He said he took a bite of his cheeseburger, I took a bite of mine. He said, we was looking at each other like two raccoons over a log. He said, about that time, the guy never took his eyes off me. He said he reached in, got them fries, and dipped them in the ketchup and ate some of it. He said, I always got some fries, dipped it in ketchup, ate some. So the guy still hadn't taken his eyes off him. He said he reached over and grabbed that Coke, took the straw and took a big old slurpy drink of it, set it back down right at me. And he said, Harold said, I couldn't do it. He said, I couldn't drink after that Coke. He said, I got up and walked out. Said, I got to my truck and said, I remembered I'd left my keys laying on that table. I was going to have to go back in and face that guy. He said, I walked back in and said, right before I got to where that guy was sitting was 2 cheeseburgers, a Coca-Cola, and order fries and my keys.
That is a classic, man.
So
That is
and I'll tell you, I was doing a TV show with Harold and David back a couple of years ago, and I asked them, I was interviewing them, and I asked David, I said, David, how'd you and Harold meet? And I kind of knew the story, but David is really still got his sense of humor. He's not in really good health, but he's doing all right. But he said, he said, I was driving through Land Between the Lakes. I'd been over there turkey scouting. Said, I rounded the corner and said, there was Harold standing outside of his car with a coat hanger trying to get his family out of a locked car. And that's what David said. So, but
trying to get him out.
Trying to get him out. So, but and he told that with Harold sitting there. But I've shared so much time with all these guys, and it's been a true blessing to get to share time with guys that I consider my heroes.
Oh yeah, legend.
Brenda Valentine's another one. I grew up with Brenda. My aunt and Brenda were best friends through high school, and I was a kid on the little red pony following them around at the Saddle Club where we all rode horses on Friday night in Buchanan, Tennessee. And boy, I thought I was big stuff, and, but I didn't know at the time that I was following a legend around. But of course, Brenda has certainly become a legend in our hunting world. But there's so many great people that I've got to share time with, and I don't take any of it lightly. I know that there's millions of people out there that would just like to get these people's autograph and shake hands with them just for a few moments of getting to share time with them. But, all of them personal telephone numbers are on my telephone, and I get to talk to them just like we're talking here. And I tell you, it's a true blessing because those people are just like me and you. They don't consider themselves anything other than someone that got to live their dreams, and
they feel blessed. They lived a blessed life.
That's right. That's right. And the really good ones in our industry, there's a few out there that don't feel this way. They think they're really somebody, but the really good ones in our industry, those that have made a great name for themselves, like Bill Dancer, Roland Martin, and Harold and David and Jimmy Houston and Brenda, and of course Wade Bourne was this way, and Mike McElmore. They're all just really great people, and always willing to help anybody that they can. I'll tell you a quick story. We did a turkey hunting show up at Harold and David's, and I had Cuz Strickland and Bill Sugg with Mossy Oak come in, and a few other guys. And Harold and I carried Cuz and Bill out that next morning turkey hunting, and Cuz filmed Harold calling a turkey up for Bill. And then Bill filmed Harold calling one up for Cuz, which Cuz hardly ever gets to shoot because he's filming. But he filmed Harold calling a bird in for Cuz. So they got two kill shots that morning. Got it on video. Cuz unloads the memory card out of the camera and walks up and gives it to me and said, "Here's your Legends of the Outdoors show." Now, that's the kind of people that all these guys and gals are, and it's just a tremendous blessing. I'm very fortunate that every year I get to stand on stage with a lot of those people. And I'll tell you, I've seen Johnny Morris shed tears talking about Billy Westmoreland saving his life.
Seriously.
I've seen Roland Martin with tears streaming down his face talking about his dad not living long enough to see him become a professional angler. And hearing these people talk about God and the blessings that they've received in the sunrises that you and I talked about, and the sunsets, and seeing the animals that we've seen. And I can tell you from the heart that it's not about the killing. It's not about the catching. It's about the getting to live our dreams and be with the people that we share like-heartedness with, and getting to be with the people that we love, like our kids and our grandkids, our sons and our daughters, brothers and sisters, dads and mothers. Like you said, your mom going with you to get the deer. I mean, my grandmother was a big fisherman. Well, my granddaddy and uncles and dad all hunted. and they fished a little bit. But my grandmother would sit on a 5-gallon bucket in a straw hat all day just to watch that bobber dance with that minnow on it, hoping she'd catch a crappie. And I told her when I was 13 years old, I was going to carry people fishing for a living. And that's what I done. But she was such an inspiration. So, not only hats off to the men, but hats off to the women, because they're our
Absolutely.
heroes as well.
And you're right. And it's about, I've been blessed. I went through cancer and divorce at the same time. It was devastating. And when I ended up out here and I couldn't, it was just, you couldn't understand and everything but it did put in perspective, because we used to think about where we were going to go this spring, where we're going to go this fall. And then all of a sudden, cancer teaches you that, hey, buddy, you better just worry about today.
That's
And
right.
one of the things, and when God brought me back and got out of this, the person I met, it's another story, and I'll share with you in a blind we get a chance to talk, but how the Lord is put it together. But He said, I'm going to raise you up again, but this time I'm going to raise you, use your talent, not for you, but for me. And
Absolutely.
you're going to become a hunter of men and not a
Yep.
hunter of animals. So anyway, been able to do some, done 3 or 4 men's retreats at Camp Table Rock down there in Missouri. But one of the things that I speak of to everybody, that's why I love hunting. That's why when I'm in that tree stand or I'm in that ground blind out in the field and watching that sunset or that sun come up in the morning and in the evening, and listen to birds heading back to the water, or hearing a gobbler, in the distance, you learn that we're not promised tomorrow. We're not promised next week. The only thing that we are promised is the moment that we're living in. And I've learned
Yep.
as somebody, I am going to make the best of that moment that I'm in right now.
Absolutely.
The good Lord says, hey, I took care of the sparrows, and don't I feed them? And I'm not worrying anymore what happens tomorrow. I'll face tomorrow when it gets there. But
That's right.
right now, Gary, I'm going to make the best of this moment, because this is the only thing
Absolutely.
we're guaranteed. And
Yep.
anyway, but
Well, no, you're exactly right. And this bass fishing team that I founded in 2009, that wasn't me. The Hall of Fame that I founded in 2002, that wasn't me. Every bit of that has been God giving me ideas and thoughts, and then giving me the ability and the good health to make these things happen. I truly believe that He gave me this bass team to help make a difference in young men and women's lives, because we're
absolutely.
co-ed sport. And guys like Seth Borden and myself and other guys now that get to coach these young bass anglers and help make a difference in their lives. There's so many people out there that are very gifted athletes and very talented that may or may not use their talents for the right reasons or in the right way, because of all these kids that look up to them. And I tell my college anglers all the time that you don't know it, but there's kids looking up to you right now. And by the time they get to be seniors, when those freshmen come in, and I've got seniors in the room with them, the freshmen are in awe, because they're in the room with guys that 3 years ago they were looking up to. And then my guys that are seniors are looking up to guys that's already graduated our program that are out there, like John Garrett, Cody Huff, and KJ Queen, and others that are fishing professionally and doing, living their dreams. And all that's God. It is nobody else. It can't be anybody else. It's God.
And the reason God gives it to you, Gary, because He knows that He can trust you with it. I heard it said once before that there's a difference between wisdom and then having wisdom and knowledge and the understanding. There's a lot of people get great ideas, but don't do anything with them.
That's
And then
right.
God gives those ideas to those who He can trust to fulfill them. And
That's right.
it comes with the wisdom, and that comes with then having knowledge of that wisdom and the understanding of how to use it.
Yep.
Yeah,
And putting forth the work and the effort to make it happen once God gives it to you.
absolutely.
There's no bad idea unless you don't do it. You know, whatever the good Lord gives you, we got to be smart enough to recognize what He gives us, and then be smart enough to follow His lead, because He'll do everything for you. You know, and as long as you're willing to work for what He gives you.
Yeah. I tell that I hear His voice the clearest when I'm out in the field. You know,
Absolutely. Yeah.
so well,
Yeah.
Gary, I appreciate your time, my friend. It's truly been an honor. I can't wait. I've got my tickets and we got our rooms. Diane and I are going to be down there this August to the Legends of the Fall Hall of Fame. We're going to come early.
Right.
I want to get to meet some people and hang out the day before. Very
Yeah.
excited. Going to be down there with Donovan Hill and his group.
Yeah.
Donovan, I got to be pretty close this past turkey season. He runs a great out. He's a great
He
outfitter.
does.
He runs a great thing at Triple H Outfitters, and of course Philip and I have been back in. I do have to tell this story real quick. Philip and I were met each other. I've known Philip, is because watching H&S tapes. Philip is an
Right.
icon. And I'll never forget, I told him it was, I'm trying to remember where out here in Iowa, but I used to come out here and I had a good pro staff in Des Moines, Iowa. And man, we used to it was like taking candy from a baby back in the day, killing ducks and geese here. And especially in those river systems when in the wintertime when everything else was froze up. And they had some great places. But I was out here with a good friend of mine that was on my staff, and we were riding around southern Iowa looking at, I think we were going down to do a goose hunt. But anyway, we ran in the back roads. I seen an HS truck parked in this office, and I said, "Hey man, pull back! That's this HS truck." He didn't
Yeah.
know that much, And I went back, and it was Philip, and he was back there with one of the outfitters. I'm trying to remember, but Philip remembers the day. But he was sighting in a muzzleloader, and I stopped in. And I just wanted to introduce myself and tell him I
Yeah.
appreciate what he did and everything. I didn't know years later that when I'd sold lynch mob calls to the outdoor group, that Philip and I, one of my first waterfowl hunts was going to Arkansas. Philip set up the deal of going to Arkansas and had the hunt all set up. And so we went down there as a group and we just had a blast. But I'll never forget the first morning, and we were hunting George Washington's, uh, was it what, Mossy Oak or Whispering Timber or something. Was George Washington run his outfitting down there. But anyway, first thing I said the first morning I got in, Philip and he had another kid, TJ Unger. They had cameras. We're going to film, and I know Philip had done a ton of deer filming, ton of turkey filming. But I asked, I says, any of y'all ever filmed waterfowl before? Because I have. It's a humbling experience. And neither one said, no, I haven't. I just put a big grin on my face. This is going to be interesting. And I'll never forget the first morning we had them wood ducks, and them ducks come buzzing through, and those guys trying to keep up, with
Yeah.
film waterfowl. But Philip was telling me today that it's probably one of his most favorite things in the filming was waterfowl because of that challenge. I
Yeah.
remember Bill Cooksey back in the day would talk about it. He says, the guy that needs to be teaching filming waterfowl is that guy at the PGA tournament when that golf ball's hit, who films that golf ball in the center and follows that golf ball all the way,
Yeah. Yeah.
And he was right. But I had the privilege of calling in Philip's first mallard that he ever
Oh,
killed, great mallard down there in
well,
Arkansas. And
he
he was
certainly talks highly of you, I'll tell you.
He was sure he was giddy like a young kid. And you know what the cool thing about, like you were talking about normal people and people who have hearts for other people and who are just great people. I'm looking at this guy who's killed 200-inch deer. He's killed Boone and Crockett deer. He's got
Right.
a wall full of deer with bow and arrow and killed a lot with turkeys and everything. Here's a guy who just shot his first straight mallard with a gun
Yeah.
and was like a little kid. He was
Yeah.
ear to ear and giddy and jumping up and down, and it was. And I thought that was really cool. And that's a
Oh, it
moment.
is really
You
cool.
talk about living in the moments. That's a moment I'll never forget.
Absolutely. Well, Philip is a great guy. I'm very blessed to have him as my co-host for Legends of the Outdoors TV. And of course, he'll be at the Legends of the Outdoors Hall of Fame, and you get to see him again. But yeah, what a great guy Philip is. Good Christian man, and
Yes, he is.
and he's been a blessing to me this last year, being a part of my TV program, and certainly thank him for all that he's done.
Well, tell me what's the best way for our listeners and folks out there to get a hold of watching your TV?
Well, they can go to the Pursuit channel. It's Legends of the Outdoors TV. Be sure and put the TV there. Legends of the Outdoors TV. They can see us on the Pursuit channel. They can see us on the Hunt channel. They can see us on Roku, Amazon Prime, all different internet platforms. But also, if they can't get any of those, they can go to YouTube and punch in Legends of the Outdoors TV, and they can see all of our past episodes right there on Legends of the Outdoors TV on YouTube. So several different ways that you can watch us. You can watch new shows coming out on the Pursuit Channel or the Hunt Channel each week, or you could go back and see the old shows on Legends of the Outdoors TV on YouTube.
That is one of the good things about the modern stuff is that how we can record in the shows we can watch now. You know, the entertainment side of it's awesome. Garry, I look forward to seeing you this August, buddy, into August down there. And folks, I hope if you listen to this, please like and subscribe. Always send me emails, any comments, anything else you'd like to hear us talk about, and people we'd like to talk to. But always remember, folks, always hunt safe, hunt smart, and may the good Lord be your guide.
Well, I'll be out there, rain is shining, all a part of the great design. Bring it on, I can never get enough, because that's what legends are made of.